Code is on the same level as talk and ideas now. Everyone's got them and everyone can produce it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Welcome to the Hallway Track. I'm Chris Vannoy. This week I'm talking with Sam Smith, who leads product and engineering at Motion Sports, based out of Bloomington, Indiana. Sam runs a team of about 3.5 people, building software for sports compliance in college athletics. It's a market that's shifting under their feet, if you followed this space at all, with name, image, likeness, or NIL, the House settlement, and new legislation seemingly every week. That world is crazy enough that Indiana won a national college football title, which is still mind-boggling. We get into what happens when AI makes code cheap enough that you can build almost anything in a week. Because once you can, the hard part isn't building, it's saying no or saying not yet. We talk feature flags, test suites, and why shipping fast safely is really about getting good at recovery instead of prevention. If your team just got a lot more capable and you're realizing the bottleneck moved from writing code to deciding what's worth writing, this one's for you. Howdy, folks. Chris Vannoy again. Today's guest is Sam Smith, who leads product and engineering at Motion. Sam, can you get a little bit more of who you are and what Motion does and all that fun sort of stuff?
Sure, no problem. Good to be with you, Chris. I'm Sam. Hi. I have been working in startups and tech for a little over 15 years now. I started working at a startup in Indianapolis that I intentionally was looking for a startup that very quickly got acquired by ExactTarget, and then very quickly after that got acquired by Salesforce. So I went to work in the startup world and got this really quick intro to small, medium, and large businesses. And that was really eye-opening. I especially learned that I like working in small businesses the most. So I went and joined a startup called Sigster, which I believe you're familiar with.
Yes, that's actually where you and I first met, was at Sigster.
That was a great move for me. I was much happier to be back in a smaller place. And yeah, have been working in that kind of mode ever since, really. Just small company, one after another. I like building stuff from the ground up. I'm a software engineer by trade, but I like to think I'm a product builder end to end. I like being able to listen to problems that people have, translate that into something that we can build and create for them. Ultimately, it's just really fulfilling for me to see someone else's job or life get easier based on something that I've built. So I'm doing that now for a company called Motion Sports. We're Indiana based. We're spread out a little bit. We've got an office here in Bloomington where I am. And we are trying to reinvent the world of sports compliance for higher education institutions. And it sounds really unsexy and boring, but there's a whole lot to learn. Most of my career is in MarTech, so it's a bit of a pivot for me. But there are still a lot of lessons to be applied. And just with any business where you're building and shipping software, a lot of that same discipline applies. It's a fun time to be doing it.
The world you're working in is actually changing rapidly, especially right now with house settlement and NIL payments and all sorts of other stuff, right? And so y'all started this right in the maelstrom of all this change in the industry you're actually trying to help. How has that impacted the way you're doing development and actually trying to build product in that sort of environment?
With a small business, you have a lot of moving targets and you have to pick what you want to build and what you want to go out first with. And that alone is a challenge. And then, yeah, you throw in the daily news briefs where so-and-so is proposing legislation that's going to change something. And that makes you kind of pause and go, are we still doing this? Is that the right way to go? You have to find ways to be able to bring in that kind of external feedback loop and keep yourself flexible. We have definitely made conscious decisions to go in different directions or to not do something or to put something on hold. I'm finding in a lot of ways, finding the right way to say, no, but we can do that later. No, but that'll go on the backlog. No, but we think that's a good opportunity when the right customer comes along. That kind of mindset definitely helps when there's a lot of things shifting.
Yeah, and that was kind of for those who don't know Sigster, which I don't know necessarily why you would. So
I still see some emails enter with Backling.
Yeah, every once in a while it still pops up. So that was a lot of the way we worked there too, was we would get customer requests coming in all the time. And a lot of my job sometimes was to say not yet, right? Maybe not right now. That's a great idea, but maybe later.
Build up the critical mass of people ask this, and then you have a better idea that it's the right time to do it.
Yeah. And I think we got into a workflow after a while where we're really good at like doing what I like to call like the simplest, stupidest possible thing to solve the problem, right? Just so we could find out if it was a problem that was actually worth solving. Lots of times, even in small companies, you're working with both customers and internal folks who think they know what they actually want, like what the right solution is for a problem. And the thing is, they don't. That's one of the things I've realized. There's nothing more frustrating for a software engineer usually than working on something that no one uses, right? If you're hiring the right software engineers, in my opinion at least, that is the thing that actually ticks them off worse. It's like, I built something and it was a waste because nobody ever uses it. And so at Sigster, at least, I found it really helpful to think through, how can we quickly find out, is this the right thing? Is this something someone will actually end up using at all, right? Which sounds a little bit like you're still carrying that philosophy forward into motion.
Yeah, we try to. And I mean, you're so right about, but it's one of the first things I think of when I'm looking at something that we're going to build. And now, it makes it easier if that idea is coming from a customer in the first place. It gives it some weight. But yeah, it's really tempting to sit there and think like, is this just going to go and collect dust in production? Maybe you just need to be able to advertise that you check the box and you have the thing and it's available and it's there if anyone ever needs it. But yeah, from a kind of creative fulfillment standpoint, you want to see stuff get used. I kind of call focusing on that like some kind of like radical focus on and being ruthless about picking and choosing what you're doing, but also how much and in what way you're going to do it. And that was back in a time where the robots were not writing the code for us. And so we really had to be diligent about how much time we're going to spend on a thing.
We'll circle back to that in a minute, but how are you using AI? Because you've got a pretty small team to be able to support all this, don't you? Could you get in a little bit about the team and how AI helps you keep that a little on the lean side these days?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a handful of builders on the team. And I would call that a small squad to work with, like for any small business. But the rate at which we're putting out stuff and serving customers and the service area of everything that we've built and touched just in the last couple of years really feels like there's a way bigger team behind it, which is part of the value of having AI in the mix. It allows us to, I mistakenly said something like, we can build anything in a week the other day. And I hadn't thought about saying that out loud first. And I kind of believe it, though. It makes code cheap.
Yeah. Well, code is, the thing I've said is like, code has always been the cheap part. Like it's always been the easy part of the job is the actual like mechanical writing of code. And like a lot of my theories are that AI just makes the easy part easier. Right. And then you're already hitting at the next thing of like, what actually gets harder is saying no, right? Like, or again, not yet, or like maybe not right now. How are you navigating that? Like, as you've already mentioned, you realize like, oh God, we can build anything we want. How do you say no in that environment?
Yeah, code is on the same level as talk and ideas now, for sure. Everyone's got them and everyone can produce it. I have written down in my notes as a reminder for myself, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
What's the Jurassic Park quote? They realize that they can and never, thought to wonder if they should, like, that sort of thing.
That is one pile of code. Yeah. Because that stuff is so cheap and easy to come by now and anyone can do it. What matters is the follow through. It's the execution. You shouldn't execute on everything, but the stuff that you do choose to go and execute on, you have an opportunity to do it well. So for us, the cool part is, AI is not just running the whole thing, right? There's still humans in every loop, and I think there always should be. And so it gives us a chance to do common engineering and good product building practices, build backlogs, groom tickets, think about what you're going to build, hold a ceremony or two, put some thought and planning and intention into it. When you're in the weeds of building something with AI, I always prefer to write a plan first. And that way I'm thinking through something and the robot's helping me put the right plan together. Whether you're doing that on your own as an individual builder or with a team of people trying to figure out what to go and do and when, slowing down to speed up a little bit more thought in that planning process so that when you're ready to pull the trigger and really start going, AI can just let you run as fast as you want to go.
Before we started today, you mentioned like yesterday was also a new sort of AI phenomenon, or I've seen it happen other places, but can you describe a little bit like what your day looked like yesterday?
Yeah. Oh, I'm in this fun spot where, player coach kind of situation. I've got my own things that I need to build, but I'm also helping my team ship and move and do things well. I have gotten into the habit of waking up and saying to myself, let's do some code reviews, because everybody needs eyes on whatever they're shipping, and we've got to put things together the right way and move it through the pipeline. And so I started doing code reviews, and I use AI to help me do that. And by the time I was done with one, someone else had the next one ready to go. And I thought, well, I can't context shift and go into the thing that I want to build, because then I'm ignoring, the rest of the team. And I'm kind of bad at saying no sometimes. So it just kind of snowballed. The day turned into a marathon of code reviews, and we got a lot of stuff moved. And somewhere along the way, we were like, these are all kind of important changes. Can we get this into production? Which can sometimes be a challenge depending on your processes and what all you have in flight, and is it feature flagged or not. It was really cool to just be in that flow and have someone suggest, let's put it out on prod because it's ready and it works, and just kind of snowballed through a ton of code reviews. And I didn't personally build what I needed to build yesterday, but man, we got a lot of stuff done, and it's the kind of thing that would have been a week's worth of work.
That again is like from a small team. Like how many total are we talking about? Like 2 or 3?
I'd say 3.5. Yeah, we've got a couple outside resources helping build in different ways too. But yeah, full time with us it's not a big crew.
I've gotten into that flow before where you end up like with a whole day just doing code review, but that was with a team like 4 or 5 times that size, right? And that's also a case where like you as the manager are still the bottleneck that has to review everything, which the coaching end of my business is usually where I coach people out of that situation.
I can see why people would pay for that.
Yeah. You mentioned feature flags. That's the sort of thing that I think about a lot, where it's like, if you want to move fast, right? Like you also have to balance that with like safety to a degree, right? And I've always thought of feature flags as being sort of this, like if you're a trapeze artist, it's like the net underneath that can catch you if you fall. Except in this case, it can bounce you back up on the... Anyway, how have you found feature flags working in your system? How are you using them? What other mechanisms do you have so that you can work quickly without fear of like stuff's going to go wrong, stuff's going to break, or the ability to recover from it quickly?
Yeah, feature flags are pretty important for us. We have a homegrown solution. I built Rails apps for 15 years. Flipper was a very, very common feature flagging solution there, and I'm sadly not building in Rails anymore, full time at least. And so I said to myself, I'm going to rebuild Flipper, and I used AI to help me do that. We've got our own version that lets us manage flags, manage who's using them, and then the rest of the code base knows how to hook in and look and see, is this flag on for this person, this company, this customer, whatever it is. That gets pretty heavily used. And in the course of trying to make sure that our velocity going to production is not too slow, we use that heavily so that we can push things out, even if they're not totally done, even if they're not ready to turn on for a customer. It allows us to safely push stuff out and know that it's not going to be exposed in a way that impacts the user experience or impacts the system. And then it also gets used for actual product rollout too. This thing is now out there and available. We can pick and choose who's going to use it so that we can do it in a little controlled way and get some feedback, or do it in a broad way and make something generally available for everyone. It's a slippery slope though. It can dovetail into pricing and packaging really quickly. It's very, very tempting to cram a lot of things behind one flag, but you also have to, especially as a small business, and we're making changes to the way we do things a lot, we've got to be able to do it at a granular level too, and say, maybe this customer has these things, but a different customer has something.
That's one of the lessons I learned. We use feature flags a lot at Sigster as well. That's kind of where I first learned to love them, right? And we abused them a couple of times for like pricing and packaging. We had some flags that lived for way too long because they were essentially like licensing checks. And then it took a long time to realize, oh no, that kind of hurts. That's a little painful. And so then we ended up, making new services and things like that. One of the use cases you also mentioned, like product rollout. Right? I've worked with companies that treat feature flags as more like individual change level flags. And so they end up with lots and lots of little flags. The way it sounds like you're using, and the way we used it at Sigster oftentimes, was that sort of like product release. Well, you have one flag for like a whole page or a whole section of the application. And then you can deploy underneath that flag like hundreds of times, right? And no one's ever going to see it. There's very little to no blast radius of the change. You're not going to mess up anybody's day. You're not going to poop in anybody's punch bowl. It's just live and it's in production, and your engineers get the little dopamine hit, and you get it live, and you get like it's in production. And the other nice thing is that then you can have the business actually look at it at some point and say like, is this what you meant? Is this a good idea? You can unlock beta customers. Like, it's really fun once you get used to it. But as you kind of hinted at, and we learned the hard way, like you have to be a little disciplined about what you're using them for, because they end up being a very powerful hammer.
It's a very powerful hammer to swing, and it does create tech debt. You know, at some point, you've got a bunch of flags that are just, they're either on for everyone all the time, or every time you add a customer to the system, you're turning that thing on. And so you got to make a note to go back and maybe clean that up so it, you know, we don't meet in there anymore. Yeah, that's an interesting case you just mentioned with kind of the different ways that a flag can be used. And it reminds me, I forget the name of the law, but the theory that systems we build reflect the people around them. So it's not surprising that I have tended to use feature flags in the same way.
Well, it's also work history, right? Like you find a tool and you realize, oh, this worked really well. And it unlocked a way of working that like felt good, right? This feels right. It feels like we can move really fast without making a public facing mess. I'll put it that way. Like you hinted at, sometimes there's mess on the inside you need to go clean up. But like it's nice to be able to like unlock that where you don't have to review every change quite as closely, which worked well, again, going back in history, like at Sigster, because we were putting advertising banners and email signatures, right? Well, it's difficult to attract senior talent to be able to do that. So we had like an overseas team, and you know, I used to teach at a coding boot camp, so we were able to bring in a lot of very early career folks, and we were still able to move fast because we developed these sort of safety systems. One of my theories is that as we move into AI, and AI gets compared lots of times with early career junior engineers, right? These same systems work exceptionally well there. And it's actually interesting to hear that you're using those same sort of systems. What else do you have to sort of like catch it when things might go unexpected? Error logging, like what else you got working?
This is what I tell myself at night to reassure myself that I'm a good engineer. I know I've been cutting corners in the past. AI now gives me a little bit more time and freedom and speed to say, hey, I'm not going to cut that corner. A really comprehensive test suite is a fantastic fail-safe. In regards to what we're talking about, it keeps you from shipping something out that shouldn't go. But it's also, I mean, code is a specification. It's locking in, here's the way this thing is supposed to work, so that whether it's a human or a robot coming by later to see how it works or to make a change to it, the coded test suite itself is a documented set of here's what I expect this thing to do, which is great. And you do have to be careful that you're not just letting Claude go rewrite your entire spec test. That is something that needs to be controlled, and you need to put some thought into it. But it creates a really nice set of rails and a framework for another builder, whether it's a person or a robot, to operate within. And if you hook that up into your code review and your deployment processes, so you see the test suite run, you see the lights turn green, it's another safety net in the pipeline that tells you this is going to be okay to push out.
Yeah, one of the things, and I think either it's gotten better or I've gotten better using AI to do this, is like you still need a human in the loop. You mentioned this earlier, because sometimes in this like test-driven sort of AI things, sometimes the way it will fix a failing test is by like removing security guards, right? It's like, oh, we can't get to this because we got a 401. It's like, let me go remove the security authorization in front of that. It's like, no, that's not what we meant, right? Again, I'm hitting that a little bit less these days, but like every once in a while, it'll slip one through. There's like, no, that's not how you want to solve that.
I was actually interested in getting your perspective on problems that you have seen from AI adoption within organizations. Kind of going back to that idea of like, I think AI is making people builders when they otherwise wouldn't be, making people more generalists when they otherwise would be specialists. And for us, that presents a lot of opportunity, especially as a small business where you got to wear a lot of hats anyway. But I can see places where it causes friction, because now all of a sudden, well, there's 6 people capable of doing this. And if they're not all communicating, maybe we're doing duplicate work. And duplicate work can be good. It gives you something to A/B test, but it can also create a lot of waste and you over focus on things. I'm curious, like in what you've seen with other companies, is there a similar level of friction popping up, and how do you handle that kind of stuff?
Like we kind of hinted at earlier with the sort of like architecture ends up looking a lot like the team that built it. You know what I mean? AI is an accelerant, generally speaking, right? It will accelerate the good and it will also accelerate the bad. So a lot of my consulting work is often coming in and fixing the foundations so that when you do implement AI, it goes well. Because if you drop it into something where, like you mentioned, like people aren't talking to each other, or people don't have clear priorities, or people aren't working in a shared context, in a shared working environment sometimes, and you introduce AI into that, and then suddenly you just hit go and, you know, throw gasoline on that particular fire, right? You end up with people stumbling all over each other. You end up with like engineers sometimes that get upset that like their product person is actually pushing in code and going like directly to production with it and stuff like that, that then they have to go and support. So it takes oftentimes a conscious sort of effort, or there's either that or there's like a growing pain that comes with this, right? Because AI adoption in software engineering organizations will accelerate and expose whatever flaws and gaps you have in that system really quickly, which is why I think you've seen a lot of like, even at big companies, right? It's like they start like GitHub and AWS had an outage recently, like that sort of thing. If you don't invest in the sort of safety systems we're talking about, like test suites and feature flags and error logging, if you don't have those basics set up, it will just accelerate the need for those things because you're going to push the production. And if you don't have those systems in place, like you're moving at a speed fast enough that like you can't review everything all the time, right? Like you can, but it took you a whole day and you've only got like 3 people. So it's like companies have to build systems that let them concentrate more. This is my theory, and I've seen it work. Concentrate more on recovery than prevention. In the old human paced world, you could put a lot of time and energy in preventing bugs from ever happening. Now, you and I both know, and the listener viewer probably knows too, that's actually an impossible goal. Like software is bugs. Every line of code has a bug in it somewhere that somebody will find eventually. But you would invest in QA and a lot of this upfront sort of process to try and catch every bug before a user signs it. That works great when you're working at human speeds and human scales. Well, great, relatively. It doesn't work with AI, right? Which is why you're seeing this like pressure in the system in lots of these cases where like companies end up dropping QA, they end up dropping code review in some cases. Or they just, code review like is just driven by AI, is just doing the code review portion. And then push everything to production. And maybe a human did a quick thumbs up, let's go to market. And then it went to prod, and then it broke. This is the way code works. If you don't take the time to think through how your code gets to production, how your code lives in this overall ecosystem, you run into these things all the time. And this was true, again, even at human speeds, like we were talking about our shared work experience, right? A lot of that system we adopted was because like stuff was on fire all the time. It's like we went through a period where customers are a little angry and stuff is broken a lot of the time and like everything else. And it's like, how are we able to still move quickly and not have that happen? One of our goals we had, and I think companies should adopt even more now, is like we will be able to find and fix the error before a customer can contact customer support, right? Like, because there's nothing better in the world than your customer support person saying like, oh, cool, thanks for reporting that. Could you refresh? We already fixed it. It's like, if you could get your system so that that's the goal, that's what you're doing. I think in this world especially, you're gonna be in a better place. Bugs will inevitably happen, right? So as engineering orgs adopt AI, you will break something, 100% guaranteed, you will break something. And so it is, how do you and the company react to that breakage? Because if you as an engineering org don't actually change anything, you're just going to keep breaking stuff. And then eventually, each time you do that, you erode trust of the business as a whole. So that eventually what they do is they say, we need QA, like this stuff's broken all the time. Obviously, you can't take care of it, so we're going to go hire other people to make sure that your stuff is quality. or they're going to replace you, which is the other option. We'll get people in who won't break stuff all the time. And at the same time, this is the weird part, like the same time the company wants you to go fast. This is the other thing I do lots of times is I'll come into slower or bogged down software engineering orgs and help them realize, because software engineers want to ship software. They've been in this adversarial relationship for so long that they're so afraid of making a mistake that everything bogs down. And so introducing these systems allow you to rebuild trust because you're fixing stuff before the business notices it's broken in many cases. Or with feature flags, you like turn it live, take a little peek over it and go like, oh no, shit, that's broke. Turn it back off. So then you rebuild that trust layer with the business as a whole over time so that software engineering can then deploy whenever you want, right? Go get that dopamine hit, ship to production as many times as you want, especially for little stuff. Like when we're changing the color on a button, I don't need to do a weekly release for that. It's just, no. And so it's helping software engineering orgs realize you want to move fast. The business wants you to move fast too. They just don't want you breaking stuff, which is what a lot of these systems that even at a small size, Motion you are implementing are what I think actually unlocks speed even more than AI does, right? Like AI without these safety mechanisms, like you're just going fast and making a mess.
Right. Going fast to what end? I mean, it really does come down to those kind of basic principles. The AI is the hammer. And if you're swinging it in the wrong direction or you're swinging it too much, it can cause a lot of problems.
We're talking a lot in code base, right? But what you hinted at earlier is it can also cause a lot of problems in product. How do you say no to a customer when what they're requesting, you could literally turn around in like a day or a week? Like it was already difficult to keep product disciplined in early stage companies, right? It's already hard. And that's when it's like, we're going to need to do 6 weeks of this. And, it was already hard to get them to not do stuff. But now it's like, what? You can just go back to your desk and this will be live in an hour and a half, right? How do you manage that?
We could crank this out right now. Yeah, I think that's where I'm trying to find the right ways to say yes on a prolonged timeline. Like, not now, not today, not immediately, especially if it's coming from a customer. Like one of the ideal spots I want to be in is where I've shipped the first version of something and I have 2 or 3 ideas of what could come next and where this could go. But you have to snap the chalk line and say, this is all we're building for now. It's really nice for me to have a customer send a feature request or mention something on a call, and it's one of those 3 things that I thought was going to be next. It's nice to be right about the guess, but having that come from a customer to confirm this is the next thing that you should go and do is a really good spot to be in. You don't always have that feedback loop. Sometimes you do have to take the guess. I think it comes down to building the right backlog of things to do, which can be harder now because it's easier to, you've got a tech debt backlog from all the AI slop you're shipping. And then you've got feature requests piling up. We've gotten in the habit of even using AI to write the tickets for us so that it's documented and it's got a plan in it. But at the end of the day, you can't, or I don't think you should, tell AI to just prioritize and execute the entire backlog. I think you still have to sit down as a team. And I don't think we're in a place where we should implement sprints. Things are changing too quickly for us to this work for 2 weeks. You still have to sit down and say, here's at least the next thing or 2 that we're going to work on. And the rest of it can kind of marinate, or you've got a separate grooming session to add some details to it. I think that's the human in the loop from a product standpoint, is just being super intentional about what you're doing and when.
Yeah. And it's being mindful. This is another like Sigster lesson, being mindful of what I like to call surface area. Right? Just how many different verticals you have compared to the size of team you have to support it. You can, without having strong focus from an organizational like product level, you can say yes to a lot of things and end up building a sprawling product that has a whole bunch of stuff that's like lightly used or barely used at all. And that ends up being a situation where oftentimes for engineering, you have like pop-up fires across the whole expanse of this. Where there's like some forgotten corner of the application that you built 6 months ago, right? That you forgot existed, that some customers stumble onto and like, hey, this thing isn't working anymore. Oh man, I just like theory, right? Is that AI is actually going to make that phenomenon more frequent because you have less emotional attachment to the code. So I think it is probably even lighter, correct me if I'm wrong, like lighter institutional memory. You used to be able to hold a whole code base in your head, more or less, after you'd been there for a while, right? And I think that's probably harder now. So that when those pop-up fires happen, it's like, what? I don't even remember that. Have you run into that all? And like, again, this is just a theory.
A little bit, yeah. We have a large surface area. And I think partly because of that reason, if we didn't have AI helping us build, we would have a smaller product, would offer less things. One, because there's just, it takes longer to build one thing.
Well, also in your market, like we mentioned up at the top, that's rapidly changing underneath you. You're almost naturally going to have a wide surface area because you're going to build things for one reality. And then it's going to shift underneath you. So then you got to go build something else. And then you get into the whole like sunsetting old applications that nobody ever wants to do.
And there's a whole bunch of other ancillary products that plug into this, right? We're dealing with college kids on campuses. Sports is a big reason why they're there, and it's an important part of their life, but we're also serving the athletic department themselves. And then it can bleed into serving the rest of academia, right? The rest of that student athletes college experience. There's a whole bunch of other ways that can branch out. And I think without AI, we probably would have said no to building some of those other slightly related things. But it's the danger of being able to say stuff like, yeah, we can build anything in a week, and I'll put your foot in your mouth.
The upside of that is it lets small businesses, the type of small businesses that you and I tend to like, it makes them look a lot bigger than they used to be able to look. You can get a lot further, which I think is also interesting. Going back in the theories, if we were bouncing out of this and we were talking to business people instead of engineering people, I think that is interesting effects on like venture funding and like how businesses get started. I think we're just starting to see some of the ripple effects of that. With a small team, you can get pretty big before you ever need more than that, right? You ever need to grow past that. And I think that's probably raising the floor on a lot of business related stuff. That's not our crew necessarily, but like if something else is like I do more networking events here in Indianapolis and keep running into those circles and keep hearing that same sort of refrain of small teams can get a lot further using AI tools than they used to.
Yeah, I find myself remembering the phrase, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. You can go farther and faster with fewer people.
It breaks a lot of those those earlier assumptions in a lot of ways.
I did not answer your theory question directly about the frequency of these pop-up fires. You're totally right. There's a whole bunch of small things that we built that go out of your head and you forget about them. And they're not important until suddenly they are. I think you're right that if you have a larger surface area of stuff that you shipped, that kind of flow will happen more frequently. But I think you're also right when you were talking about earlier the speed of reactiveness to that. They're going to happen more frequently, but they're going to be less on fire than they would have otherwise. One of the corners that I cut less now is just around documentation. I'll push out a big feature and then I need to go and document how that thing gets configured and used. And I've got a set of Word documents that I can go reference when someone says, hey, this customer needs to use this thing that you shipped. And I forget, one, how it works, but two, how to also turn it on for someone. Using AI, not just to build and ship the thing, but to document onboarding processes is super helpful. But then also within the code itself, to document how a certain thing works or what a process is, so that when that little pop-up fire happens, whatever AI tool you're using to go back and relearn how that works and fix it has the context that it needs directly in the code base to be able to read that really quickly. As compared to without that tool, you got to go read a whole bunch of code and make some PRs from 6 months ago, and that's way too slow.
Yeah. And that is almost precisely the sort of thing that, like, if you were trying to, like you mentioned, cut corners and get by with less, do more with less, that was documentation. Like, God, no. You and I both did Ruby. The whole idea was like self-documenting code. The code itself should be readable. When a bug would happen, you'd open up a code base and like, oh man, especially in Ruby apps, you end up jumping through 8 different files and folders to trace the whole flow. And then it'll be in the last place you look, like most things. Some other time, you and I should nerd out on, like, you mentioned, we've both done Rails apps for a long time. A well-formed Rails app, I run into people who've never done Ruby before that are using AI tools to build those. Because it turns out Ruby folks, It's a highly opinionated framework that like there's a right way to do things. It's flexible enough that you can do whatever the hell you want. But if you follow the golden path, there's a right way to do it. And Ruby folks talked a lot and did a lot of open source code and explained what their code did a lot and talked a lot about how to write good programs. And it turns out that a lot of AI tools can read all that stuff. I ran into somebody at a networking event last week that is day to day in like TypeScript land, because that's what AI tools work really well in, that is on the side is building Rails apps, because it turns out AI tools work really well with Rails.
That theory crossed my mind way back in the past, I think, but it's competing with it's a popularity contest. You know, there's so much more other JavaScript stuff to read and replicate. And if you've got a community that's chasing that instead, I think the Rails world is a better structured input for AI to be able to replicate and work with. But if that's not where the people are, then it tends to kind of not fall by the wayside, but it gets less attention.
I think at the end of the day, and again, this is like, I used to be a coding bootcamp instructor and I taught Ruby and I taught Rails because I always felt it was the easiest thing for a human to learn, right? Because it's a lot like writing. I think there's an element of AI that also works well with that. I don't know. It's a theory right now. Before we go, we already nerded out a little bit. Let's just lean into that. What actual tools are you and your team using? Like, what are you finding success with these days?
That was one of my safety nets from earlier, is a shared tool set. I coded in Vim for over half my life, and Cursor was the thing that got me out of a text-based IDE. IDE is a strong word for Vim. And I used Cursor for, I don't know, over half a year, probably 8 months. Got me into the flow of working with AI tools and writing plans and executing them and getting into the phenomenon of, okay, I'm just going to walk away from the computer now. And then we shifted to Claude. So we were in this state of like, we knew we wanted to use AI to expedite development, and it was kind of like choose your own adventure. I found that one of the other engineers who was using Claude had a little bit better experience, was getting stuff done faster, more comprehensively. Claude Code, being terminal based, felt a lot more at home to me. I've been using Claude predominantly. We have shared skills that we use with that. It's nice that you can commit them into a repository and you can update them, and everyone who has access to that has access to the same tool set. That has also bled over into other parts of the business too. People using Claude for, using the co-work app to do whatever they need to do is nice, especially from a licensing standpoint. You can get everybody on the same plan. It kind of wrangles the business together in a good way. So Claude's kind of the predominant one for us. We've had a lot of good success with Linear. We tried Jira early on. Linear's got a great model where the first 250 tickets are free and you can put as many people on you want it. So they get you hooked real quick, especially if you start using whatever AI tool you're using to write the tickets for you. Create a plan, document it, shove it in Linear, and we'll go look at it in our weekly meeting later to see if we should do it or not. That workflow, I think, has paid off pretty well for us from a product management standpoint.
Very cool. Cool. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for chatting this morning.
This was fun.
Yeah, very much fun. It's always great catching up with you. And like, if I haven't said it before, thanks for Sigster, by the way. In case it isn't clear, that was a very sort of formative experience in how I think about a lot of this stuff. Like, I think we did really good work there.
Email will never die.
Yeah, email will never die. And I will leave you with one last thing that ties back into the conversation that I also picked up from Sigster. My favorite when will this be done thing that I picked up at Sigster and I still use to this day, that feel free to use, is before the heat death of the universe. Like, we will get to that eventually, but I'm not going to give you a date right now, but sometime.
That's the last ticket on the roadmap.
Yeah, it's in that same black hole at the bottom of the roadmap. It's like, we'll get to it eventually. All right, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Good to see you, Chris.
Good to see you. That was Sam Smith, who leads product and engineering at Motion Sports. 3 things stuck with me. When code gets cheap, restraint becomes a skill. Just because you can build it in a week doesn't mean that you should. The teams that move fast without making a mess invest in safety nets like feature flags and test suites, so a bad change has a small blast radius. And the goal worth chasing isn't preventing every bug. That's impossible. You're never going to do it. It's fixing it before your customer can pick up the phone. If this was useful, follow the hallway track wherever you're listening so the next one shows up. I also write a weekly newsletter called Expedite over at getaxiomatic.com. It's more of this kind of thinking on a regular cadence. And if you're in college athletics, go look up motion sports. Sam and his team are doing real work in a corner of the industry that's rapidly changing and most people aren't even aware of. So thanks, Sam, and thank you. See you next time.